last year we did this. And in doing it last year, we had, I think Greg was here, Shirley was here, Ben Colbert was here, Lance was here. And we had a conversation about remembering Robeson, remembering Witherspoon-Jackson. Well, each time we do this, we've had a poem or a statement on growing up in the neighborhood. And so I thought at this time it would be a good idea to just bring in a different generation of folks to talk about growing up in the neighborhood, and then show this on August 6th at the cultural event here. So I invited y'all to come and to recall, to take a trip down Witherspoon-Jackson historical memory lane with me. And let's have a conversation about what you saw, what you felt, what you thought about growing up in the neighborhood. And so with that, Greg, I'm gonna kind of come out at you because you just wrote a book, what I think is an interesting piece on reflections from a vibrant past. And obviously, you've been looking at us, you've been looking at you and reflecting on roles and responsibilities. And it sort of, when I first heard about the book and looked at the book, I thought about Roman right away, because he was somebody who did that pictorially, right? And for you to do this coming from verses and poems was, I thought, a different take from a multimedia perspective, but at the same time, a reflection of what you think you saw. And I remember a picture that I had getting married in the park, and you on a bike on the hill watching the procession. Then you and I talking about that later. I did not realize what I was watching, what I was seeing, but to be able to see you going through the African garb and all that was all part of Witherspoon-Jackson and growing up in the neighborhood. And I remember, just to talk a second more about the wedding, part of what I wanted to do for the wedding was not send out, elaborate invitations and, that whole deal. What I really wanted to do was to invite my community to something different. And so we put together some flyers and went around to every door, at that time were black doors, all right? And saying, hey, come to Johnny Bailey's wedding, and you'll know that the wedding is starting when you hear the drums, right? And so we had Charlie Madden in the park about 1 o'clock, just beating on the drums, and you could see folks coming down Witherspoon Street, John Street, into the park to see and take part in the wedding. So using that as a backdrop, talk to me a little bit about what you remember about growing up in the neighborhood and how has it shaped you?
Well, I came from a blended family. My mother married Reverend Gibson. I was probably 6 years old. So I really came to Princeton broken in a lot of ways. I was dealing with the loss of my biological father and moving into a new community with new people and a new family system. So for me, I think the community really helped to heal me in a lot of ways. There were people like you and others who kind of saw something in me, and maybe it was just the idea of just being a young brother who just needed some encouragement along the way. And that's what I loved about this community, was it always stepped in, and you didn't have to know everybody's personal story, but you were there to kind of cultivate and support. And the Blacktop and Community Park Field and all those places were communal hubs where people could come together for various days and events, and you just felt a part of something bigger than yourself. And I think that's really what I loved about Princeton, was that we were a part of something bigger than we were as individuals. I think about the role of the lodge and those events that they used to have where, on Saturdays they would have regalias and folks would come together for festive occasions and you just felt like you were a part of a community and something beautiful and something bigger than you.
Grace, you grew up uptown.
Uptown Princeton, yes.
Yeah.
We called it uptown.
There was downtown and uptown.
Yes.
It was Clay Street.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it separated with Clay Street. You're exactly right.
It was separated by Clay Street.
But you grew up, but your family, your history in this, we've talked over the last several years. You talked a lot about your family and the history of growing up here and how far your history goes back in terms of your family history. Using that as your backdrop, what has been, and you've had some unique experiences in terms, because one thing I found out is that when you leave here and come back, there's a different perspective in how you view the world. And you've had an opportunity to leave and come back. So talk about your growing up in the neighborhood and give us a little bit of not only the McEwen story, but the Grace McEwen story, one of the best athletes that ever come out of here, one of the best people that ever came out of our town.
Let's see, growing up as a child, there was no time. Time was timeless. And so I look at this community, which means a group of people that have characteristics that are common. And I say we're more than just a community. We're a village and we're a family. Everyone raised everyone's child. Everyone knew everyone. If my mom or dad said, don't go downtown, if I went past Clay Street and I was on Lee Avenue, someone on Lee Avenue called my parents. And that's the way we were. Everyone knew everyone, everyone took care of everyone, and they helped each other. And it was, like I said, more than a community, it was a family. It was a bridge. It was a town that, to me, was kind of secluded because we were different than other towns. We were different than other cities. And if you went out and visited other places, you were like, oh, this is not like Princeton. I remember going to Harlem, my sister and I. We have relatives in Harlem, so we go up there for a week or two in the summer in August. And I wanted to go outside because in Princeton, you went outside, you were safe. You never knew what unsafe was. And I told my aunt, I got to go outside and play. And, there was a school, PS, whatever, across the street. And so she sent me to the store. And there was a group of girls. And they said, where are you from? I said, Princeton, New Jersey. And they said, oh, you're country. I said, spell it. And they started chasing me, so I ran. But then we became friends, and they taught me how to double dutch. But it was from this town that you could go outside of it. And you were different. You made friends. You were different. And so that experience of even the Black-owned stores, the Black-owned restaurants, record shops, beauty salons, barber shops, there were multiple. You had Griggs Farm, the gas station. You had just different places. Even before, my brother was telling me before the Blacktop became the Blacktop, it was the Borough Garage. That's right. And then they made the Blacktop, and like Gregory said, it was the hub for everything. That, the Masonic Temple, I remember cookouts out there. And my mother being an Eastern Star and a daughter of ISIS, they had a girls group, youth group called the Youth Feliciteers. And we all belonged to that. And we did community service and we did other things. So yeah, this is a special place, a very special place.
Now, you and I, we talk about this, man, and over the years, but we also talk about leaving and coming back. And for you to leave and come back and now be one of our elected officials in the town, take me through that journey in terms of your recall and your ability to reflect back on some of the things that have been important events for you.
Thanks, JB. I'm sitting here, I'm looking at Dean, and I'm qualifying what Gracie and my brother here said, Gregory. And I think what we're all talking about is the fact that we feel like Princeton is special, and I'm sure everybody feels like wherever their home is at, if they felt like they've had a sense of belonging, felt the love of not only their, nuclear family, but their extended family, and are able to see during their times of growth people the African American diaspora showcasing themselves, showing how creative we are as a community. I think about the 4 churches here. I think about my early days going to 2 church services. My father was Episcopalian. So at 8 o'clock, when I was about 6, 7, 8 years old, I would go over to Trinity Church at 8 o'clock, out at 9, done for 1 hour, and then go with my mom to Mount Pisgah for a few hours more. Right? And, I look back on my belief in God now, my spirituality. I know where that came from. I know it came from Mount Pisgah, from my mom. Everything that I am, my growth here, I often reflect back, and I've shared this before, in the 3rd grade at Johnson Park School. My father was off from work for a while. He was a post office postman, and he had the chance to help me study for a test in 3rd grade on Egypt and the Rosetta Stone. And for the first time in my history, I got the highest mark in the class. And I beat a young lady, Karen Fitzpatrick, who was perennially had A+, 100, 100, 100. And I reflect on that because that was a life-changing experience for me, to understand that if I studied, just simply studied, that I could achieve what everybody else achieved. I could be as smart as anybody else. So I took that, built upon that at Princeton High School, at Valley Road, at Community Park, at Lincoln University. And then through my life's experiences, coming back here in 1996 full-time, I knew it was time for me to use the skill set that I had been developed here. I look back and I think about Marv Trotman. I think about you, JB, on the blacktop. I think about Seco, how I used to run from that dog. I used to be intimidated to go up to Clay Street because I didn't know people on Clay Street, because we were kind of on Birch Avenue in our own little conclave, because it's sort of set apart on the end of Birch Avenue. We had the rainbow houses, but we also had 16 Green Street where the Maddens, my cousin, lived. So I would love to travel uptown, like you said, to go up to see my cousins. So all of this contributed to my growth. And when I came back here, as I said, in 1996, I got involved with the Princeton Housing Authority based on a conversation with Michelle Tuck Ponder. I said, I'm here, I'm back, I'm ready to go to work. I'd like to be on the Civil Rights Commission. She said, that's not where I need you. I need you at the Public Housing Authority. So I spent 24 years there. During that time, we worked with the Witherspoon-Jackson Neighborhood Association, constantly working with joint efforts, Safe Streets, building street credibility and political credibility. And then I got to the point where I realized God put it on my shoulders. It's time for you to take a step up. It's time for you not just to act as a community activist, but you can do more if you take a darefull attempt, have the courage, and have the confidence, and look to your friends and family to build trust in the community and run for public office. Because I know that we as Black Princetonians, as people of color, as low income, as moderate income people, as Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood people, if we don't have our own agenda, we will be on somebody else's. So my job and my responsibility, and I take this very seriously, I say it's a privilege and it's an honor, but more than being a privilege, it's a responsibility, and it's not for the faint of heart. But every day I wake up to make sure that I understand that I represent 33,000 people in this town. And while the Witherspoon-Jackson community is close to my heart, obviously, I have great passion and compassion for it. My job is to look out for all of us now and to focus on the least of us, because I know that if all the policy decisions, all the political decisions, all the positions that we take, all the moves that we make, all of our reactions, if it focuses on the least of us, and we can answer the question, is this right? And does this make sense for the least of us, that we can grow foundationally from there and have it be right for the rest of us? So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but it's a serious responsibility. And I love the work I do, and I think peculiar to many people when I say this, the reason I love the work I do is because I love the people that I serve. and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. This is about all of us coming together, because when you build community, that's what it takes to grow. In particular,
especially
the situation we're in right
especially when
now.
the community is being, there's a book out by Chidoe Achebe called Things Fall Apart. And when communities fall apart and the institutions in communities fall apart, then you lose a great deal of what it was that made us great, what made this community important. I talked about Romas a little while ago, and one of the things that Romas stressed, in addition to his pictures, was that on Birch Avenue and Lee Avenue were doctors, lawyers, artisans, folks who were skilled, folks who worked at the university, folks who had, unbelievable backgrounds, but you never heard about them. And it's almost like us not hearing about Paul Robeson, you know what I mean? The fact that we're in the building next door to the house that he grew up in and he was born in. The fact that, many of us didn't even know who Robeson was growing up in this community. So when you don't get a chance to have those types of heroes, then you end up at Valley Road or somewhere else in a special class. But if you'd known that Robeson, who could have inspired you to aspire to be greater, tell them who could have came up out of here. And some great men came up out of here. But you also mentioned Clay Street. Clay Street was the center of the universe in the Black community for a long time. And how many of y'all remember what was the most significant animalistic figure on Clay Street?
The turtle.
The turtle.
And Scoop Carter.
No, animalistic. Animalistic. Animalistic was the turtle.
The turtle.
Right? And you lived right near the turtle.
Right in the same courtyard.
Yeah.
That's a turtle.
I mean, the turtle was your hero.
The turtle that we had, merry-go-round.
Yeah, right. Talk about growing up in that court, because there's a lot of bad sisters in that court. Miss Price was there, Miss Tadlock was there, George Brown was there.
Huh?
Priscilla Peggy.
Priscilla and Peggy.
Talk about growing up on Clay Street. What you remember?
Growing up on Clay Street was fun to me. I enjoyed it. And my mother, she played a big part in it, because if I needed help with school, she would send me to Mrs. Harris's house. Sarah Harris. Mm-hmm. Yep, and Mr. Waxwood lived around the corner. So I went there to Mrs. Harris's house to get help with my math. So, and I went to Aunt Neat to get my hair done. I walked all the way up to, either went to Fox's restaurant or where my family worked. I'm still married a Fox. So I went there, or I went to Griggs restaurant up the street. And so it was fun. Yeah. And the jungle gym, I learned I was always good in sports and stuff. So I was good on the jungle gym. My mother scared me one day because I was up there doing flips and standing on top, and she came around the corner and screamed, told me to get down. And then I realized what I was doing. So I had to get down real quick. But double dutch. And one time we lived on John Street. That's when we first came here in the 3rd grade, because I wasn't born here. I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. Okay. So, yeah, so we lived on John Street. And what I loved about John Street was the blacktop, because every weekend you would see people come in and play basketball. They played basketball all day. And then during the week, we would eke out a spot to play softball, so yeah, it was fun. Yeah. And I never knew that people weren't allowed to come to Clay Street until I started hanging out around here. The parents told them to stay away from Clay Street. Yep. So
Clay Street.
You learned a lot. There's a lot of characters.
Characters for sure.
Yes, a lot of characters, a lot going on. So.
Well, Clay Street, that corner of John and Clay was the corner.
Yeah.
Was the corner. And when I got to Wagner, there's a book out called Tally's Corner. and it was about where black men met on the corner to tell lies, to drink, to smoke.
And
to
sing a cappella.
Yeah, to sing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so there's been many a time that I've been on Tally's Corner, Clay Street Corner, to hear Gillette and Root and them break out in a ooh, you know what I mean? Or to start singing, or to hear Johnny and Michael and Louise holler from the court that they were in, because they all lived in the same court, so they would come outside and sing out in front of the house so that you could kind of, see that they were doing something. Or Billy Hill, you hear on the radio singing Walking Miracle when he had went to the Army, the Marines. And he cut him a national song with his group. So being able to feel that Clay Street dynamic, and I loved it. I loved it. The most famous person on Clay Street to me was Miss Booby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Miss Booby.
Miss Booby. Y'all don't know.
Oh, Miss Booby.
Lived on the corner.
I remember Miss Booby.
Miss Booby lived on the corner, and she was a character unto herself.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or I remember Hank and Logan, who did the Rod and Gun Club, across the street talking about going fishing or going down to the shooting range or whatever they would do. Or Barbara Marshall. You know what I mean? Before she married Slop. You know what I mean? To see her on the corner making sure that Dick and Jeffrey and Billy and all them, or Carolyn Adams making sure that whole corner was corralled. You know what I mean? Yeah. So Clay Street was a hotbed. But a lot of times folks didn't want you going there, not because they were afraid something would happen to you. Folks didn't want you going there, especially the older folks, because they didn't want you to see them there. Because a lot of times, some of our older folks would stop at Waterboy's house. You know what I mean? Because Waterboy was the place that you went to get you a drink after the taxes had closed. You know what I mean? So having those experiences and reflections were very important. Yet, I remember, man, coming here and coming down to your parents' house. I said, I'm getting ready to start a youth group out here, and I want to see if you will let me deal with Dean and have him be able to come. Your dad said, go ahead. And so Dean and Kevin and Kelly and Darius and John and all of them would come, and we would do different things, you know what I mean? And they used to call me Donald Duck. And they used to call, because I'd be walking up Witherspoon Street with 15 little black boys and girls behind me headed to the university for some type of program. And you were a part of that, man. And I'll never forget the amount of time we spent playing basketball, learning how to play football, learning how to play catch, talking to y'all. What do you remember, Dean? Because your parents, like Leighton, you coming from that area of Clay Street, that area of Birch Avenue. And so what is it that you saw down there? And what is it that you saw as you started to move around and engage in the community and become not Dean Boyer, but even Moo Dean?
Well, I think that when you started Joint Effort, that was the first time I felt a part of the community. Because even though my father was raised in Princeton and had two brothers, they both moved away when they were real young. So I didn't have any relatives in Princeton but my immediate family. And I used to observe everybody had a cousin somewhere. Everybody was going to a cookout. That was family. And I came home a few times and said, Mom, we don't have no family in Princeton? And she said, no, unfortunately not. All your family's in Trenton. So I was always feeling like I was on the outside or on the fringe of the neighborhood until John started Joint Effort. And that made me feel truly a part of the community. And you never know how kids, you never know how kids feel as they're growing up because nobody asked them.
Right.
And so that was a moment where I was like, okay, I belong here. I'm a Princetonian in a sense. So that was very important for my development because it taught me how to interact. And then other people started coming in my life and being mentors. Leighton Newlin, Earl McEwen, a lot of people that sold into me. And it made me at that point really, really feel a part of the community. I never really felt a part of Clay Street and other areas because, I had nobody up there that sold into me. So I was at that point where I stayed where I felt safe. But eventually as time went on, you get older, you branch out, you make your friends, and, it becomes home. I ride around Princeton now, still living here, and I also almost feel like an outsider all over again.
Why?
Why? Because the people that I used to see, I know it was a ritual, and my father would drive down John Street. No matter where we were coming from, he would drive down John Street because he had to ride by the Masonic Lodge and see whose car was parked out front. That determined whether he was going to stay home or go hang out. And I do that to this very day. Some people say, why are you riding down John Street? I said, it's just a habit. You got to just bear with me. But so many things that but Princeton really, through the interaction of others, gave me enough confidence to go out into the world. I remember going to school and college. I don't know how people find out Princeton has money, but I was oh, you from Princeton? You got money? I was like, nah, not really. After a while, it got so bad, I started getting bracing. Oh yeah, I'm loaded, man. I should tell the girls I'm loaded. I'm from Princeton. But it gave me the courage. And then join effort working with you, John. We had an intimate relationship, because you used to take me with you to different places when you were setting up basketball tournaments. I would ride in the car with John. And the biggest highlight was John used to take me to McDonald's or Jack in the Box. And then eventually I became a snitch because I started saying, hey, man, me and John, we rolling, man. And so, but it was a great experience. And I always talk about this neighborhood with my son, my daughter, and let them know how it was. Because friendship is essential to the soul. And, when you develop those type of friendships, that's very important in your development as a person.
Good, sister. Good to see you. Welcome. And you grew up across the street from the place that we all went every summer to cool off, Miss Marshall's pool. Yeah. And if we couldn't go up past Miss Marshall's pool, then somebody in our family had a hose spraying water on us, and we acted like we was at Miss Marshall's pool, feeling that way. But I remember you talk about going down John Street. I remember going down John Street, and you couldn't even come off the porch. You know what I mean? Kenny might have been able to, and Billy might have been able to, but you and the two younger brothers couldn't come off the porch.
Not at all.
But you have been, like Grace, one of the educators amongst us. You have been one of those that, if I remember correctly, your email is every child counts, every kid counts.
Correct.
So you're just letting you know I pay attention. But at the same time, it also suggests that you put something back into the young folks of the town. You left here, went away, got a skill, came back like many of us. What do you remember about growing up here, and how has it impacted your journey and your contributions?
Whenever I was elsewhere, and I would mention that I was from Princeton, people would look at me like, they're black people in Princeton? Yeah. A little bit of shock. So there was an expectation that I would come correct, speak correct, act correct, and I tried not to disappoint. But growing up here made all the difference in my life because I instantly had that in. Oh, yeah, she's from Princeton. There was an expectation. that expectation meant, okay, so show us what you can do. And I was grateful to come back. Thank you, Bill Johnson, get me a job in the district. And I was able to work with kids at a variety of ages and be able to say to them, oh, you're so-and-so's grandchild. And kids would straighten up instantly. They would know that I wasn't just somebody from school, that I knew their family, and I would have the expectation of them to do the right thing. So it has been, Princeton has really given me an amazing boost.
The role of expectation.
The expectation
In this community, the role of expectation for us, all of us, because we're all part of the inspiration and aspiration and the expectation that our parents had.
Right. We in this community have looked out for each other, and that continues to be an expectation. And just knowing that there were kids who would come to me because they knew that I knew their families, and I would be able to give them some sort of support, a boost, a word of encouragement. And that's really what shaped me as an educator, trying to make sure that people left me feeling better than when they first came to me. That was important to me. But that's how the people in this community were. There were people who knew that I was a Turner girl and would say that they had seen good things in the paper or had heard good things about me. And that just continued to lift me. And because we all seemed to know each other, because people knew our parents, we knew that we couldn't give anybody any sass. We knew that we were expected to continue this lineage and continue to support one another. And that's what I'm trying to continue to do.
Picking up on the educator piece just for a moment. All of y'all respond to this, but talk about the role that Trot, Shirley, Virginia Ewell, Bill Johnson, Eric Craig,
Don Evans.
I'm talking about folks who are educators in our community. Don Evans really wasn't from here. But they all were at the high school or the middle school as counselors or as teachers or as principals. Well, how did they impact any of y'all?
Well, let me say, when I was in the first class that Bill Johnson, when he came to be the school principal at John Witherspoon, and we were just amazed at this incredibly strong African-American man with this big afro who looked like us, but was in charge. And I think that for us in particular, it gave us a sense that we had a seat at the table that we had never had before, that we knew somebody had our back, that somebody would look out for us. Because before that, we really didn't know, we didn't have any real value, I don't think. At least we didn't perceive ourselves.
But you didn't know Jenny Ewell, did you?
Oh yeah, and I remember Jenny Ewell also. I remember
because she was the first one. Mr. Waxman was first.
Right.
But then came Jenny. There was a long
In
time
fact, I remember when we all, I had little signs out, when we were picketing to make sure that Miss Ewell got elected into that position. There's an article I have at home with my picture and Donald Craig. We were out there advocating, for Jenny Ewell. But when they finally hired Mr. Johnson in that position, I was in the 8th grade class, and I tell you, it was a game changer for us. We felt like we had someone who looked like us and was there to support us, and he definitely did.
Anybody else on?
I remember Mrs. Gary. Mrs. Gary was, to me, a very intimidating woman. And I was bused to Little Brook from the neighborhood. They sent some of us out to Little Brook from the neighborhood, bused us. And she was there. Because I didn't like the environment, I started to act out. figure the best way to get home is to act out. That's send you back where you came from. And because I was considered bad, they put me in their class. And, when I went into class, I was like, oh, Lord. So the first week, I told this story at her retirement that I wasn't feeling well. And I went up to Miss Gary's desk, and I said, Miss Gary, I'm really not feeling well. And she said, boy, if you don't sit down somewhere. And I said, Miss Gary, I'm really not feeling well. He said, if I tell you again, you're going to regret it. And as soon as she said that, I threw up all over her desk. And she was like, boy, look at you. Why didn't you tell me you were sick? But that was the first time, and she lived on Birch Avenue. So I used to walk through the parking lot of Calwood, Community Park, just so I don't have to walk by her house, because I figured she still had that kind of control on me. So that's my memory of the teacher that I can remember growing up in Princeton that really had an impact on me.
Miss Potter, kindergarten. You remember it, Evelyn? You were in Miss Potter's class. I don't know if any of you remember Miss Potter. No. This was at Nassau Street School. And we had to walk to Nassau. Didn't matter where you lived in the neighborhood in Witherspoon-Jackson. Right. As a kid, you had to walk to school. And we had to cross Nassau Street by, Cox's, where they sold peanuts and all that. So that was to have that in kindergarten, that was a great start. Because the expectations were there. But then my mom, I don't know if you guys remember Reader's Digest.
Sure.
We went to school 12 months a year, because in the summer we got Reader's Digest every week in the mail, and we had to write a report. We had to read a book and write a report for my mom. I don't care if you were this high. So Miss Potter that was the first. And then I don't think I had anybody else until high school. I think even Don Evans came.
Even at John Witherspoon? Even at Quarry Street?
I didn't go to Quarry Street. I went to Nassau Street School, John Witherspoon, and I went to Community Park for 1 year and then over to the high school.
So Ronald and Eddie went to.
Yes,
they went to. So you were one of the first that didn't go to Quarry Street. You went down because they built a new middle school there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then in the high school there was a bunch of people. Marvin Troutman was one of the counselors. Yeah, Miss Branch, she was an aide, but boy, she pushed us. And so when you get people in the community, even if they're not a teacher and they work at the school, Babe Wooten worked there. So these were people that worked there that lived in the community. And you knew you had to still do the right thing. So it was a lot of great influence.
What about you, Barb? Anybody influence you particularly?
Well, like I said, Mrs. Harris.
Right.
She used to tutor me in math. And Mr. Waxman. I was there when we marched to John Witherspoon. But when I got to the high school, Marvin Troutman.
March?
Yeah, when they built the school.
We had to sing this song. We were marching to John Witherspoon. And we marched. We were the first ones in there and graduated from there 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was nice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Come on, you ain't finished.
I also had Mrs. Potter.
You were in my class.
I was in your class, but when I got to middle school, I was over at Valley Road. So I got the chance to have Charlie Higgins for singing. Mm-hmm. Dave Larkin came in to teach science, and he was only there for a short period of time, but he was the one who told me, hey, you are too smart to be sitting here quietly in class. Tell us some more of your answers. You're right. You have it right. And that made a difference to me, to have somebody, again, another big afro, but encouraging, supportive. And really, once I became a teacher, though, there were a number of people who came and talked about my father-in-law, John Counts, about how they read books because Mr. Counts made them read and brought reading to life for them. So there were so many educators that were around us that made a difference in lives.
So I'm going to give you, taking your book as an example, I'm going to give you all a name, and we're going to go around the table and you tell me little bit either about that person or give me a word that you think exemplifies that person. Okay. One of my heroes, Pete Young.
Pete Young, an incredible influence on all of our lives. A man's man. I remember him and his wife at their coffee cup, and just a great Mason. Just an all-around presence of strength and vigor.
Earl McEwen.
Consistent, focused, tradesman, expert. Not so much a mentor, but as we were talking earlier, he was one of the characters in the neighborhood.
And all characters
like
are
Ronald
welcome.
Gates,
That's right.
like Jewel Hunt, like the Rhodes brothers, Jimmy Mack, just people that showed you how to live life, what it is to give back, what it is to grind, what it is to be consistent, to be hardworking, to be God-fearing, I think that's why we all feel the way we do is because what we learned here in Princeton is that we are our brother's keeper.
Absolutely.
Because we saw it in so many ways. And again, you need something done in your house and it's got something to do with plumbing, you call her Queen. He's going to take care of it for you.
Mark Trout.
Mark Troutman. He wasn't my guidance counselor, but he was the basketball coach. And he trusted me. So we had Larry Miller and Tony Bailey and Bobby King, and they were all on the basketball team. And sometimes when it was a game day, Larry Miller or Tony would be across town. So Marvin would call me in on the loudspeaker from his class. Go find him. He'd give me a pass. Go get him. We got a game today. And I would go across town and find him and say, come on, you got a game. Come on back to school. And they'd come back. But Marvin was an inspiration in the high school because he not only was a guidance counselor, so you had someone there, but during the time I was at Princeton High, we actually had a race ride. And I don't know if people knew that. We had a race ride, and I stood there by the principal and watched. I was standing
My brother and them were right in the middle.
They were right in the middle of it. Tony,
the Greasers, right? Or something, fighting.
They were fighting. It was the Greasers, because they had different groups at Princeton High at that time. And I stood right there, and I said, you can't say I'm involved in this.
It's interesting. That's when Johnny and Larry Miller was just knocking folks out.
They were knocking people out. But what came after that was I graduated with Stevie Towns and Bobby King and Kathy Sweeney. Well, they started a group, and it was 6 of us, and we met with the principal so we could get our issues addressed in school, the issues we were concerned about, the things that were going on that divided the students by these groups, by these cliques. And so we would go meet and we would have demands. And I can honestly say they met some of our demands. But we had candid conversations with the principal, the vice principal. And we did it all year, because that happened my junior year. Tony and them were seniors that year that the riot happened. So our senior year, we had this group. And I can tell you, after the riots, we had a junior prom. We had a band from Trenton called the Black Truth. And they played at the junior prom at Princeton High that year.
My man, Miss Tadlock.
Mrs. Tadlock, she was the mother of Clay Street. Yeah, and she kept everybody in line. And if she asked you once to be quiet or move, and you didn't, next thing you know, water was on you.
Hot water.
Hot water was on you. But I knew her because I talked to her when those moments when I listened to her, and she's a very sweet woman. But she didn't take any mess. So, and she demanded respect, and she asked you once, and you didn't do it. She felt disrespected.
And that's why Dana and Lauren and all them kind of did the right thing.
Carla, yes. Yeah. It was Mrs. Tadlock and her daughter, Mrs. Johnson. They were my neighbors, and they were very sweet and very insightful and gave good advice. So,
Talk to me. You mentioned Bill gave you a job. Talk a little bit about Bill.
Oh. To this day, whenever I think of middle school and a person who had his finger on the pulse of everyone, not simply in our community, but in all the communities, Bill Johnson comes to mind. He made it his business to know about students, to get to know their families, and to try to give the support that was needed as whatever he had to do. He would make sure. I'm thinking about so many things that happened in the middle school that he was on top of what was going on with the teachers, but also knowing how the students felt, which is necessary in order to make a school run. And of course, in whatever other things that were going on in the community where the middle school fit between the high school and the elementary schools. He had it all figured out. And it was just amazing to be around a person who fully understood how Princeton worked, what needed to happen in order to get things to work for students.
Dean, talk a little bit about your recollection of Mr. Teague. Do you remember Mr. Teague?
I sure do, in every way. Mr. Tiggs used to have one-on-one conversations with me. I remember when I would work on the ice truck with him, he would talk about Islam. And I never heard of that, but he would always say, whatever I tell you in this truck stays in the truck. Because if you go back and talk to somebody about it, you won't be able to work with me again because your parents wouldn't like it. And I never understood what that was really about. But he used to talk to me about being a part of the Moorish Science Temple of America and being consider himself a Muslim. And so all that was foreign to me, that was really foreign to me. But he gave me a book about his organization when I was young. So it didn't really impact me until I went to college. And in 1980, I met Minister Louis Farrakhan for the first time. And as he was speaking to us, I was reflecting back on what Mr. Tiggs told me about. And Mr. Farrakhan had me so far out there that I thought he was Jesus Christ in the flesh. I was finally convinced that Brother Tiggs, who at that time told me his Muslim name was Bey, that's who he was talking about. So it's funny you would mention him, because I still think about him all the time. And it's ironic that, that you think about certain people at different times in your development. So if he was here, I would give him a lot of credit for the way I think about things, because he started me on that journey of thinking outside the box.
Jimmy Mack.
Jimmy Mack. It was a place where we all went. Everybody felt a sense of solidarity because we all got our haircuts the same way. He was a great person to talk to. He always had information. And so, when you go in, he was very adaptable to people. He read people well, he understood people, and he knew your unique personalities. He respected your parents, but also was able to listen to you as an individual. He made us look our very best.
Talk about your dad, man.
Wow, man. My dad.
A postman.
My hero. Irving Leighton Newlin, and I'm Irving Leighton Newlin II. I'm going to start to cry, but it took me a long time in my adult life to recognize that the apple really don't fall far from the tree. You know, I look at what I'm doing now, that I was trying to build community. When I came back here, I took an interest in my neighborhood and my people. My father was one of the first presidents of Princeton Association for Human Rights. You know, you don't hear a lot about my father with regard to the hierarchy of Princeton past. I don't make a big thing about it either. But the fact is...
some of us know.
Some of us know. Yeah. Some of us know. And the more I travel, I understand how much he taught me and how much he meant to me. And one thing I always knew growing up in Princeton, because we had such a nuclear family. I mentioned Birch Avenue, but all of Princeton. You know, we had this sense of belonging. And one of the things I always left my house with every day is I never wanted to do anything that would embarrass my family, my mother, my father, my grandfather. I didn't want to do any harm to the Newlin or the Madden family name. And the more and more I go through my everyday now, I remember my father throwing a hard shoe at the television during the riots, Edmund Pettus Bridge, the riots, Newark riots. He was angry. He was really who showed me how to be a black man in America, not Dr. Martin Luther King, not Malcolm X. My father showed me what it is to be a black man in America. I'm not discounting our leaders, but I'm here to let everybody know that, you know, I worship my dad, and I still do. And every day that goes by, I realize how much he taught me, how much he meant to me. But I watched him get up. You know, as a mailman, you're up and out every day at 5 o'clock. And my father
Rain or snow or whatever.
He never had less than 3 jobs. The whole time I knew him until he retired and he got older. He was a provider, and he really led by example. You know, and I'm just so blessed to have, you know, had a mother and father for the many, many years that I had them. And 2 brothers that I loved and loved me, and Birch Avenue. I can't tell you how important in my life Birch Avenue is, because that's where my family was. It was everybody on the last block of Birch Avenue that we loved each other and we looked out for each other. And you know what? We still do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about Aunt Neat.
Aunt Neat. Aunt Neat. Well, Aunt Neat was special. She was special. She didn't do our hair, but Miss Mills, Aunt Virginia lived a couple doors down from her. And so that's who did our hair. First it was my Aunt Mary, until her arthritis in her hands got too bad. And then we went to Shuggy and Miss Mills. Right. They had a beauty salon on Witherspoon Street, right. But Aunt Neat had hers on the side of the house. Aunt Neat was everybody's aunt. Yes. That's what we called her, Aunt Neat. And I can tell you about her sisters, too. Miss Bess lived across the street, which was 2 houses up, but they owned both those double houses. And then there were the sisters on Green Street, Miss Tadlock and Miss Edwards. Mm-hmm. And Christmas, probably midnight, they would walk around and sing carols in front of different houses. And my mom always baked George Best a cake. And I used to say, why do you bake that stupid boy a cake? Although he was our friend, he came over our house every day. One day, but let me go back to Aunt Neat. Because Aunt Neat would call you, she'd sit on the porch. And you know, most people sat on their porches. Miss Mangum across the street from me. And they sat on the porch. She said, come here, Gracie, what you doing? Just playing. We're going to play up there. She said, you know, I see you. I said, I know. Everybody's seen us. But she was just a sweet, sweet woman. She was a very sweet woman, and she talked to you. And you know, growing up in Princeton, everyone spoke to everyone. Mm-hmm. Even as a kid, you knew to address your adults.
And if you didn't, they'd make you.
Oh, they'd make you, and then they'd call your parents. So they would definitely make you, but you didn't forget that. You knew automatically to speak to everyone you saw growing up.
Barbara, talk to me about sugar pie and stale.
Oh, sugar pie. Yes. My mom and my aunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were
They were a pair.
Yes, they were. And my
A
mother,
great pair.
A great pair. My aunt and my mother, and I have to mention her friends too, because like I said, I came here from the 3rd grade, and I don't know if y'all remember Lily Taylor. She had a beach shop, and her husband had a taxi.
Yes.
So Aunt Lily let me have a birthday party at her house when I got here, you know. So I just met friends, and it was very, you know, I had a good time. And we used to go there for Easter egg hunts and everything. So my mother, she liked to cook. And so she cooked at sometimes she would cook at the Masonic Temple, sometimes she would cook at the Elks, but that was her thing. She liked to cook, and she's a very good cook because most people in my family are cooks. But my Estelle, she worked at the restaurant Renwick's, was it?
Renwick's.
Up on Nassau Street, and she was married to Mr. Fox, you know, Lily. And we used to travel all over. He used to take me to trips to New York when he had to deliver film. I don't know if you know, he worked with a film company.
On
so
film.
So we used to drive in his van, in the van. He'd take us to New York to drop off the film for the documentary that they were working on.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Talk about Mary Moss. You saw her every day. Every day during the summer.
The playground, we thought we owned the playground because we lived across the street from it. And to this day, I look over and say, Ms. Moss would not be happy about this or that. But I love the playground was, you guys know, it was the spot. As a kid, you just thinking that you could swim and getting in the pool, and she would make sure that it was taken care of, chlorinated, everybody was doing the right thing in the pool, laying our towels out on the grass so we could dry in between jumping in and out of the sprinkler, making sure that we were pulled in for arts and crafts or the music person who came. So the playground and just to be there. As a kid, that was heaven. I could not wait for summer to come, and I was sad when it was time for us to close the park and go off to school. But we would climb over the fence when it was closed and still continue some fun on the swings. But Miss Moss, the playground, the place that she ran was smooth, and every kid couldn't wait to get there. Absolutely. Couldn't wait. And it was the way that she was. She made it a welcoming spot for every kid.
History.
Talk to me, Dean, about, you picked, but Warren Huff or John Broadway. You choose.
Well, that's a tough one right there. I'm going to say something about Mr. Huff because Mr. Broadway has inspired so many people that his name is always talked about. But Mr. Huff was a silent, mentor. He didn't say much, but he led by example. And he was a close friend of my father's. They were both Masons in the community. But he did a lot for his family. He was a good provider. He was always and I never saw him not in a cheerful mood. And what inspired me the most about him, or what impressed me the most, was the fact how great an athlete he was.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I wasn't really never a baseball player, but as I got older and really used to, for me, going down Community Park and watching Tig and Hines play softball was a major event. because the community totally came out in support of Tig and Hines, and so it later went on to C²C, and we supported that. And so, but Mr. Huff was one of those gentle giants, did the best he could for his family, but also was a true athlete. And I was told by Mr. Carter years later, Mr. Huff was a semi-pro baseball player, and if the times were different, he probably would have been a professional baseball player.
Him, Jim Carter, Bobby Montgomery. There are a number.
My Uncle Peaches.
Yeah,
He got drafted by the Pittsburgh
there were a
Steelers.
number of them.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Pirates. Pittsburgh
King,
Pirates.
all of them. You know who the best athlete to come out of here? It was Mr. Perigo. Mr. Perigo. Mr. Perigo was the first black student at Princeton High. Before Brown versus the Board of Education. Mr. Perigo.
Never knew that.
So let's talk about this. You know, as we talk about institutions, I remember the Blacktop as an institution. I remember the Coffee Cup as an institution. I remember the American Legion and the Shrine and the Elk Still There were institutions. I remember the garden that we ran through but spent very little time in as an institution for the Italian American community here, because they played bocce-ball down there every day at 5 o'clock, hundreds of them. I remember Mr. Sinkler running Sinkies during the summer. Everybody would talk about, all the white kids would talk about, we're going to Europe, and we're going here, and we're going there. And they say, well, Johnny Bailey, where you going? I'm going to Sinkies. And I was excited about going to Sinkies because that's where all of y'all would be, all my friends would be. Mr. Sinkler would be out there teaching us every game possible. You know what I mean?
Tennis.
And babysitting us for our family, going back to a village. Mr. Sinkler was one of the griots in the village that made sure that we got stories and that, we were safe. I remember Miss Carter, right there beside the Broadways. I remember Big Head Sandy Carter, who you go up there and Miss Carter would give you a cone of ice cream for a nickel.
And a whole pickle.
Yeah. I remember Charlie, the cleaners guy, right there beside Hezzy Craig's and Miss Rose's store. So old Charlie had a cleaners there, and I remember going in there and just sitting and listening to. He was at West Indian. He would go in, I would go in there, and all the guys would bring their clothes there. All the ladies would bring their clothes there. And I remember the stories that he would tell. Or you go into the Coffee Cup and you hear the stories that were being told. Some of those things that y'all may not know, but I was a houseboy for the gambling establishment, which meant that on Friday and Saturday nights, next door to Signorino's was that big house that was there? Well, Peter and them had rooms in that house that were gambling rooms. And so what would happen is that on Friday nights, everybody would come and they would gamble, and I'd be standing by the door. Barely go get me a beer. Barely go get me a sandwich. Barely go get me this. And I was the only boy who wasn't 18 years old that could go into Signorino's and get a beer or whatever and take next door, because I would say, this is what Pete didn't want. And Angelo and Phil would say, okay, don't come in the front door, out the side door. Remember the side door they had in the back, so you could go out that way. I remember Hawk teaching me how to play pool up in Signorino's. You know what I'm saying? And I guess I say all of this because we all remember some things, some places, some characters in the community. And I think that what I wanted to do today was to just have us do a recall. Think about from whence we've come and where we've been and who were the characters who were in the space that we all grew up in. And those characters were heroes and sheroes to us. We didn't know that they were worked at the universities, at the clubs. We didn't know that they had jobs that were not significant jobs, but we thought they were heroes and sheroes to us because they were working, and we saw them coming downtown every day, and they were clean. They were clean. Yeah. You know what I mean? We saw Doris Burrell take an average woman and make her a beauty queen in an hour. Mm-hmm. We see Aunt Neat and Suge and some of the other sisters do the same thing. We see Jimmy Mack do a point and a sharp point, and we see his brother do the same thing, and then we saw Little Fish, and then we saw Arthur Barkley all come in there and do the same thing.
Billy Mack.
Yeah. So I thank y'all for coming in and helping me recall. I thank y'all for coming in and sharing your stories about whence you've come, what you saw, and even in hindsight, some things that reflection made you think made Princeton a better place, which has made you a better person.
John, can I say something before you close? I just want to thank you for all your years of dedication in this community. You've inspired a whole lot of us, whether they tell you or not or give you kudos. I mean, you were a major figure in a whole lot of our lives. So I just want to thank you for continuing to come back and so into this neighborhood when it's nothing like it used to be. And everybody would understand if you didn't come back, but you come back and you work with what's here. Mm-hmm. And I always admire you, brother, and I always will continue to admire what you do. And I know you thought I was joking, but somebody should really write a book about your life. And I wish I had that skill. Because you have put into this community in every way. You haven't always been liked in this community, but it didn't matter. You stuck in there with the kids, the young men, and no matter what nobody says, they can always tell a John Bell story.
That's part of the contradiction, because y'all don't remember when during the race riot, I came back from Wagner. I just came back from Wagner, and this is at Mount Pisgah Church, right? And we were having a conversation. And I said, well, can I speak? And they said, oh yeah, Bailey, go ahead. I said, we gotta stop calling each other MF and B's and all of this. And it was like, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, right? People start holding on, oh no, Bailey cussing in the church and all of that, right? Two things. I left the Elks and went to the temple. Left the church and went to the Elks. I hadn't been in there begging. My mother was working by the bar, begging to come here, boy. So did you just go up there and cuss in the church and all that? I said, yeah, Mom, I did that. She said, have you lost your mind? You know what I mean? These folks are going to turn on you, because what would happen is Monday through Friday, we're all doing the same thing. Saturday, we're all doing the same thing. But Sunday, somehow, some of us got better than others, right? And she said, you know, they're going to hold this against you. You'll never be able to function in this town. And it was a contradiction, because the adults wouldn't deal with me here, but they let their kids deal with me. Mm. They let their kids deal with me. And I ask myself that all the time, and I think they said, the adults didn't want to deal with you because you were a competitor. They let their kids deal with you because you're an aspiration to a whole lot of them. You're an inspiration to a lot of them. You've been a former pro athlete. You had come through here. You had done some things that they couldn't negate. You know what I mean? But they could also deal with the fact that if they wanted to, and they was drunk or they was talking to somebody, say, well, yeah, he cussed in the church. Yet when they came outside the church, we was all cussing. You know? So I appreciate that, and I appreciate, you know, again, y'all taking the time to come and to participate in this discussion. And I don't want to do this every year. Next year we'll have a different group. Part of what's going to happen on Wednesday is that the young folks who are getting scholarships and the ones who just graduated, I'm going to sit them down on Wednesday night. And we're going to have a conversation about, so what have you learned? What can you bring back to the community? How can you contribute? Because I think, we need to hear from them, because, as you say, we don't always. So here's an opportunity for us to hear about them. And some of us might be able to help them find a job. Someone might be able to make a recommendation for a reference or whatever that might be. So thank you. So having said that, Adam, thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for always being there and here when we call on you. I will see y'all again on Friday. Hopefully you'll come to the kickoff and, the fish fry. And there's a whole list of things. If you hadn't seen it scheduled, please take a look at it because there's a lot happening. And it's gonna be good. It's gonna be informative. Some of y'all may not know, and I'll leave this as the last point. The community interviewed Bill Johnson in this room. The community interviewed Bill Johnson in this room. This room, if y'all might remember, wasn't shaped like this. Remember, the stage used to be right there.
Right, right.
All right. And so you came up, however you came up, but the stage was there. That's right. And so we interviewed Bill Johnson, Trot, myself, a bunch of us, Miss Edwards, a bunch of us had a meeting. We brought him here because we knew that the school board was thinking about bringing him in. And we met him here, all got behind him, and the rest is history. So I'm glad to have grown up here. I'm glad to have come through here. I'm glad to have known who I know. I'm glad to be able to look back and reflect upon what happened and to look at the current scenario and to think about what's going on. Because, see, I see your point. I see y'all being who we've been waiting for. You know what I mean? I see y'all being that next group of folks who's going to take joint effort or whatever it is, you know what I mean, to wherever we're going.
Yes.
Leighton will tell you that we said 50 years from now in 2015, we hope that folks will go up to the waxwood, move that tree out the way, and dig. Because there's a space capsule, there's a time capsule there of all of our stuff, all of our family history and all of that. And so I'm hopefully that in 50 years from now, somebody will pull that up and see some of the stuff that I put in there, see the stuff. Bernadine put damn near a whole bag of stuff in there from her family. You know what I mean? She ran home and made something and came back and went home and forgot something and came back some more with some stuff, So folks were excited about the time capsule. And I think it sort of reflects, a good sense of our history here. So,
JB, real quick before we go, I just want to piggyback on what Brother Dean said. Thank everybody for being here. But I want to let you know this started out as joint effort, Safe Streets with basketball. Your program has morphed now into much more than that. It is an annual family reunion where not only do we talk about the history of Princeton and the history of this neighborhood, but we also have real dialogues, real conversation about real things that take a look at our future here. So I want to thank you on piggyback on what Puff said about how you come here every year and you're building legacy for our children who will follow us. So thank you for not only the past and the present, but the future and for your consistency and your dedication.
Hear, hear.
And may God continue to bless you.
Yes.
Man, thank you.
Yes.
In the words of the old Negro spiritual, y'all be good now, yeah?
All right.